Now that we've introduced the cell theory, we're going to go into more detail about cells. Today we're going to be going through slides 1 through 16 of this PowerPoint, and you're going to be answering along with questions on the said puzzle. So let's get started. In a little review of cell theory, you need to remember that all living things are made up of cells. And cells are the basic units of life, and new cells are always made from existing cells. And on my PowerPoints, if you haven't already done it, I'd like you to click View and turn on Speaker's Notes, and you'll see some additional notes that go with the PowerPoint that I think it's important that you know. Let's stop and check and review what you remember about cell theory. True or false? An organ, like the heart, is the most basic unit of life. True or false? So yes, the answer is false, because we know that not an organ, but a cell is the most basic unit of life. And we're going to go more into detail later, in a few days, about how an organ is made up of cells, and how that structure is formed. Now for question number 2. Let's answer true or false. All cells come from pre-existing cells. And yes, the answer is true. Part 3 of the cell theory is that all cells are made from pre-existing cells. Let's move on to slide 4. So how do we see cells? We know cells are really, really small, so we can only see them with a microscope and stains. And what stains are is coloring that we add to our samples when we view with a microscope. And you might remember from my microscope demonstration where we were looking at the bacteria on this microscope slide, it was colored like a purple color. So these are stains that help us see our sample better. And then we're going to pick 2 kinds of microscopes. We have a compound light microscope. So that would be what we used in my demonstration. Let me just show you here. So remember, we have the ocular lens, the objective lens, the stage. We put the slide up on there, and we were able to look at it. Either you could look through the eye holes, or in my demonstration, I showed you through the computer. But also, we're going to see a picture of one in a minute. They're also called electron scanning microscopes. And these are a little bit more complicated and expensive, so we don't have one of these at school, unfortunately. But in talking about the stain we use again, we'll use it to view a cell that might be too clear or hard to see its structures. And you don't need to memorize the actual name of the stain, but methylene blue, that's a commonly used stain in the laboratory. So these could be cells that come from inside a person's cheek in their mouth, and they're a little bit clear and hard to see what's going on. But then when they're stains, and you'll eventually do these throughout your science career in high school, they're more easy to see. And that we have the compound microscope, compound light microscope, like I showed you. And now, scanning electron microscopes. They're a little bit different. So they're very complicated and very expensive microscopes. So what they do is they shoot these particles called electrons, and you'll learn more about them in chemistry. But they shoot them at what you're trying to look back, and the signal they receive back creates an image. So they're very good at viewing very, very small things. Like, for an example, a virus. That's even smaller than a cell. And we know a virus is not a living thing from the video we watched. Our viruses living organisms. So usually they're in black and white, but scientists can colorize them to make them more interesting and easier to view. Similarly, how we would actually add color to a slide, they colorize the picture after it's taken by this big giant electron microscope. And here are just some really neat pictures that were taken by an electron microscope. Let's stop and check your progress. Answer question 3 for me, please. If cells were too clear and difficult to see under a microscope, what would you add to make them more visible? A. Water. B. Stain. C. Sugar. Or D. Soap. And the correct answer again is stain. You'd add stain to make your cells more visible under a light compound microscope. Now let's dive a little bit into how cells are sorted. There's actually different kinds of cells, and two main ways to sort them are prokaryotic versus eukaryotic. So, prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus, while eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. And think of a nucleus as the control center of a cell. So they're what they call an organelle, and we're going to go over what that is later. So they really contain all of our genetic information, all the information necessary to survive and to reproduce. They're kind of like the hard drive or the memory stick of life. And eukaryotic cells that have a nucleus, you would think of a plant or an animal cell. And this is a eukaryotic cell, and you can see right in the middle of this big ball is the nucleus. And cells that usually may not have a nucleus would, the example would be bacteria, and they still have genetic information. They still need that information to live and reproduce. However, they don't necessarily have that all in a central location in a ball in the center of the cell. It's a little bit more spread out. Now let's answer question 4. Eukaryotic cells, complete the sentence. A, have a nucleus, or B, do not have a nucleus. The correct answer is eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. Eukaryotic cells, nucleus. Prokaryotic cells, no nucleus. Let's talk about cell structures. So we did mention the nucleus. So that's one of the cell structures, but cells have many different parts. And some are the same in different cells, and some cells have different structures. Like how we said prokaryotic cells don't have a nucleus, and eukaryotic cells do have a nucleus. Let's explore further. So we're going to talk about cell membranes, the cytoplasm, cell walls, and then we're going to address what are organelles. What are cell membranes? So cell membranes are thin, very flexible coverings on the outside of a cell that you can see in red right here, and then a close-up again. And all cells, both prokaryotic and eukaryotic, have membranes. And this controls what enters and can exit the cell. And it also protects and supports the cell in doing that. And I'm not sure if this is a little bit outdated, but you shall not pass a cell membrane, Gandalf. Now, what is the cytoplasm? So the cytoplasm is sort of like a jelly-like material that is all on the inside of the cell that holds the cell together. And you can see in this diagram, you have your different structures here, but all of this, in this picture it's blue, and then in this picture it's like a light brown yellowish color. That's the cytoplasm. It provides sort of like the filler, the structure of the cell. And these individual structures are organelles that we'll talk about tomorrow. And now our last thing for today we're going to talk about is cell walls. So cell walls are also important in supporting, protecting, and providing a shape to cells. However, they're only found in plants in prokaryotic cells, right? Prokaryotic cells that don't have a nucleus. And then plants are eukaryotic cells, but they're plants. They're not found in animal cells. So humans, we're animals, our cells don't have cell walls. We only have a plasma membrane. But with plants and prokaryotic cells, the cell wall surrounds the outside of the membrane, and usually you'll be able to observe that they are a square or rectangular, pretty rigid square shape. And this ends the lecture for today. Tomorrow we're going to be diving deeper into organelles and learning more about the structures of a cell. Thank you.